the event horizon we have always trusted time. Every civilization that has ever looked up at the stars has built its entire existence around one quiet, invisible assumption that time flows forward, steadily, reliably, at the same rate for everyone and everything. We wake up, we age, we build, we die, and time carries all of it forward like a river that never reverses. It feels like the most fundamental law of reality, unbreakable, sacred, but there exists a place in the universe where time does not flow forward, where it does not slow down, where it simply stops. Forever. When a star with enough mass collapses under its own gravity, it does not merely die. It tears a hole in the fabric of spacetime itself. The resulting object, a black hole, possesses a boundary called the event horizon. From the outside, it appears to be a perfect sphere of absolute darkness. But what is happening at that boundary is something so violent to our understanding of physics that most people spend their entire lives never fully confronting it. If you were watching an astronaut fall toward that boundary, you would never see them cross it. Time dilation near the event horizon is so extreme that from your perspective, the falling astronaut would appear to slow down, freeze, and then hang suspended at the edge of forever, their image slowly redshifted into invisibility. They would never arrive. From your frame of reference, they would be frozen at the threshold of oblivion for the rest of the life of the universe. For the astronaut, however, they cross the boundary in a perfectly normal moment. They feel nothing unusual. And then time itself, for them, becomes a direction they can no longer travel. Inside the event horizon, the future does not point forward. It points inward toward the singularity. Every second that passes pulls them not through time, but through space, toward a point of infinite density. They cannot reverse their fall any more than you can reverse your aging. Time, for them, has become a one-way corridor to a place where physics breaks down completely. An advanced civilization building near such an object would discover that its ships dispatched toward the horizon never return. Its signals never echo back. Its instruments record a universe that has quietly decided that certain coordinates in spacetime are simply not part of the conversation anymore. They would look into that perfect darkness and realize that somewhere beyond that boundary, time itself has become a cage with no door. Closed time-like curves, we assume, with deep and reasonable confidence, that cause always precedes effect. You cannot receive a message before it is sent. You cannot be killed before you are born. The arrow of time points in one direction, and the entire logical architecture of civilized existence is built on that arrow never reversing. But Einstein's equations of general relativity, the same equations that describe gravity and the expansion of the universe with breathtaking precision, contain within them a terrifying loophole. Under specific conditions of rotating mass, extreme spacetime curvature, or the theoretical geometry of traversable wormholes, the equations permit the existence of closed time-like curves. These are paths through spacetime that loop back on themselves. A particle, a signal, or in theory, a person traveling along a closed time-like curve would eventually return to their own past. Cause and effect would become circular. The future would become the past. The timeline would fold into a ring with no beginning and no end. The implications for a civilization that stumbles into this geometry are not the romantic paradoxes of science fiction. They are a quiet, total dismantling of everything. Law requires that actions have consequences that follow in time. Memory requires that the past is fixed and unchangeable. Identity requires that you exist in a continuous forward-moving thread. A universe with functional closed time-like curves does not offer any of these guarantees. A civilization encountering such a region of spacetime would find its history becoming mutable, its future uncertain, not because of probability, but because causality itself no longer applies. Decisions would have no clear direction. Records could be altered before they were made. The civilization would not end dramatically. It would simply begin to lose coherence, like a story being rewritten from the middle until the beginning and end no longer agree, until the whole thing dissolves into a quiet, structureless silence. Quantum entanglement across time, we comfort ourselves with the idea that the present moment is sovereign. What happens now is determined by what happened before and nothing else. The past is fixed. The future is unwritten. The present is the only moment of genuine causation. But quantum mechanics has produced experimental results that suggest the present moment may not be sovereign at all. In a series of experiments known as delayed choice entanglement, physicists have demonstrated that a measurement made now can appear to determine the state of a particle in the past, before the measurement was made. John Wheeler's delayed choice experiment showed that the decision to observe a photon as either a particle or a wave, a decision made after the photon had already traveled through an apparatus, appeared to retroactively determine how the photon had behaved at the beginning of its journey. The present reached back and edited the past, not metaphorically, physically, measurably. For a civilization advanced enough to understand and manipulate quantum systems at scale, this is not a curiosity. It is a destabilizing revelation. If the present can influence the past, then the historical record is not a fixed archive. It is a negotiable document. Every measurement taken now is quietly rewriting what happened before the measurement. The universe is not a story already told. It is a story being told and retold simultaneously from multiple points in time. A civilization that fully internalizes this reality would face an existential vertigo from which there may be no recovery. The ground beneath every certainty they have ever built would reveal itself to be made of something that shifts depending on when you look at it. They would not be destroyed by a weapon or a disaster. They would simply lose their grip on what is real and let go, gently, into a universe where nothing they remember can be trusted to have actually happened. The Planck time barrier, we believe that time is continuous. That between any two moments, no matter how close together, there exists an infinite number of smaller moments. That time flows like water, smooth and unbroken, from one instant to the next. This assumption is so deeply embedded in our physics and our intuition that questioning it feels almost absurd. But theoretical physics has identified a unit of time so small that the very concept of before and after ceases to have any physical meaning. The Planck time, approximately 5.39 times 10 to the power of negative 44 seconds, represents the smallest interval of time that current physics can describe. Below this scale, space-time itself is thought to become a seething, foaming quantum chaos, a structure so violently uncertain that the notion of sequence, of one thing happening after another, simply dissolves. At the Planck scale, time does not tick. It does not flow. It fluctuates in and out of coherent existence in ways that no equation written in the language of continuous mathematics can fully capture. A civilization that develops technology operating at or near the Planck scale would discover that the foundation of time is not a smooth river, but a violent, granular storm of quantum geometry that only averages out into the comfortable flow of moments we experience because we are so impossibly large and slow compared to what is actually happening underneath us. And there would be no way to unknow it, no way to unsee the abyss beneath the second hand of every clock they had ever built. They would continue their lives above that knowledge, but something essential would be gone, some quiet certainty would have been consumed, and they would age toward their end in a universe they can no longer pretend to fully understand. Time dilation near neutron stars, we live our lives at a single speed of time. Everyone around us ages at roughly the same rate. Our clocks agree. Our calendars synchronize. We have built entire civilizations, entire legal systems, entire relationships on the assumption that time is a shared universal experience. But park a civilization close enough to a neutron star, an object that compresses more mass than our entire sun, into a sphere the size of a city, and that shared experience fractures beyond repair. The gravitational time dilation near a neutron star is not a rounding error. It is a chasm. Time passes measurably, significantly slower the closer you orbit to its surface. A crew stationed near a neutron star for what feels to them like a single year would return home to find that decades have passed for everyone they knew. Their children would be older than them. Their civilization would have moved forward without them. The people they loved would have aged, changed, died, and been buried in the time it took them to complete what felt like an ordinary mission. A civilization that begins colonizing regions of space near dense, massive objects would eventually find that it cannot maintain a shared timeline. Different colonies would age at different rates. Laws passed in one location would be ancient history in another before the message announcing them could even arrive. Identity, culture, continuity, the things that hold a civilization together across space, all require that time be roughly the same for everyone. Near a neutron star, it is not. The civilization would not be torn apart by war or catastrophe. It would drift apart, moment by moment, each fragment of it aging at its own private speed, until the connections between them became so stretched across time that they were no longer, in any meaningful sense, the same people at all. White holes, we understand, or believe we understand, that time has a direction. Entropy increases. Things fall apart. The universe moves from order to disorder and never backward. This arrow of time is one of the most robustly observed principles in all of physics, and we have never recorded a confirmed violation of it. But Einstein's field equations, perfectly symmetrical, perfectly indifferent to our preferences, permit a theoretical object that is the precise time reversal of a black hole, a white hole. Where a black hole devours everything and releases nothing, a white hole releases everything and devours nothing. It would be a point in space-time from which matter and energy erupt outward, a reverse singularity, a place where time runs backward relative to the arrow we consider normal. Some theorists have proposed that white holes may be real, that the Big Bang itself may have been a white hole erupting from a singularity in a parent universe. If white holes exist and a civilization encountered one, it would not be destroyed by fire or gravity. It would encounter a region of space-time where the direction of time itself is reversed, where things unburn, where signals arrive before they are sent, where the concept of history runs in the wrong direction. They would stand at the boundary between two arrows of time pointing away from each other, and discover that the universe has no single agreed-upon direction for existence to travel. They would look into that erupting brightness, that reversal of everything they knew, and feel the last certain thing dissolve, not in an explosion, not in darkness, but in a slow and terrible dawning clarity that time was never really theirs to keep. The heat-death horizon, we tell ourselves that the universe is young, that we are early, that there are billions of years ahead, unimaginably vast stretches of time in which everything is still possible, in which stars will still burn, and life will still bloom, and civilizations will still rise toward the stars. This is perhaps the most comforting lie the universe allows us to tell ourselves. But the second law of thermodynamics is patient beyond all comprehension, and it will not be argued with. Entropy, the universe's relentless tendency toward disorder, toward equilibrium, toward sameness, is not a temporary condition. It is the final destination. In the incomprehensibly distant future, every star will exhaust its fuel and go dark. Every black hole will evaporate through Hawking radiation into a thin whisper of photons. Every gradient of temperature, every difference of energy that makes work possible and life possible and thought possible will equalize. The universe will reach a state of perfect, absolute, featureless equilibrium. And in that state, time will not stop. It will continue. But nothing will happen in it. There will be no events, no change, no sequence, no before and after. Time will exist as a dimension with nothing to measure, a river with no current, an arrow with nowhere to point. Every civilization that has ever existed or will ever exist is moving toward this horizon, not fleeing it. Moving toward it, carried by the same current that carries every photon and every atom and every thought. There is no civilization advanced enough to stop entropy. There is no technology capable of reversing the direction of universal disorder. There is only the long, slow, beautiful cooling of everything that ever burned. And at the end of all of it, not silence exactly, because silence implies that something was there to go quiet, but something far more final, the seamless, eventless continuation of a universe in which time has become a word with no referent, spoken by no one, meaning nothing, forever.